great info in your document and everything. Cool to have you rejoining us in the completely different version of StarCraft that it is these days. You said you kind of got back into it recently. How long ago was it that you've been back playing?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so literally
What's that?
probably
You
like
say
3 weeks
it's not your
ago.
birthday.
I'm still not
Who
playing
said
seriously.
it
I'm a
was?
grad student. That's
It's
like
my
my main focus.
birthday,
But
and you have to
I
be
just
happy
figured it'd be
on
fun
it.
to
That's the law.
at least get
Party
back into
time.
like mid masters probably. My I have a friend who just started his PhD in like a different university than I'm at, and he started playing. He knew that I used to play, and he wanted me to teach him. And I realized that I no longer am where I once was and don't understand the game anymore. So I thought it might be fun to
So what was the
do a
highest
coaching.
you got to before?
I was almost grandmaster.
Awesome.
This was before masters had like masters 1, 2, and 3, but I was
Yeah, yeah.
like
But
but
GM
I
had
was like
come out by
rank.
that point, but there was no tiers or anything, right?
Yeah. I was rank 3 masters, and I was like going against grandmasters like I don't know every
Yeah. So you would
fourth
have
or fifth
been
game or
Masters
so.
1 kind of in that
Yeah,
cusp area. It's so funny
yeah.
because they didn't show MMR back then either. So it was always a bit more vague where it was like you're like I'm rank 2 in my division, which usually meant
Yeah.
something, but there'd be someone who just joined Masters, so there's 2 people in their division, so they're rank 2 and I'm like, okay, this is like such a confusing system. It's like
I agree. Yeah, it
Blizzard
was kind
bending
of
over
confusing.
backwards to try to make it so people who get really like fragile about their ranking have as much obfuscation between them and their actual progress as possible. And
Yeah.
eventually, years later, they're like, yeah, okay, turns out the most competitive RTS game in the world, maybe not the right approach for it. We'll go back on that and we'll just show you guys exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think my biggest claim to fame was almost beating In Control at a like a LAN event in one of those the big comic expo, not Comic Con, but PAX West. He was like playing there, and we were playing for like you'd get a computer if you beat him, I think, and I was so close, but he had a hidden third and ended up coming back.
Dirty. In Control
Yeah,
is always, one of the always those corner bases and different things. He definitely knew how to take a good gamble from bad spot.
yeah,
Well, anyway, let's get into it since we've only got limited time.
yeah.
So obviously, hey, I made you the party leader, right? Oh,
Uh, yeah, I guess I
oh,
am.
there we
Yeah,
go.
whatever works.
Oh,
I can
actually,
make
no,
you leader if you
but
want.
you're already in there. There you go. Now you're the party leader. Can you right click me and just make me the lobby host? I think is the name of
Yep,
it. Like,
there you
what's
go.
it called?
Yeah,
A big thank you, by the way, Nopra and Bloodfeast for the subs, guys, in the chat, as well as Adventure Josh. Happy birthday to Adventure Josh. Hope you guys are all having a good day. So, I mean, I'm sure like the people watching on Twitch are going to be very happy. They've got a 2-minute delay because I'm doing EPT later, but
okay.
this is like, how to beat Void Rays and stuff is the number one kind of Zerg issue right now, and people letting Protoss get to Skytoss. And you
Yeah,
do need to
it's
go
pretty
like
annoying.
pretty hard in a certain direction, and picking that direction can be difficult, especially if you're like very internally focused on just kind of doing your standard opening. And I think the important thing is in this meta, to not try to do everything perfectly and react to absolutely everything. The biggest problem most Zergs are having, myself included, is we're kind of falling into this trap of like, well, if he does this, I'd like to do this style. If he does that, I'd like to do this like that instead. If he does that, I'd like to do this third style. And I need to know at every single point. So if it's Adepts or Oracles in the opening, I need to know and do this. If he's doing this or this, I need to know this at the 7-minute mark, because otherwise I'll do a Hydra push. Otherwise I'll go Corruptors. Otherwise I'll do this. And it's like, there's just too much bending over backwards. And what do I see from Zergs at the moment in this matchup? Incredibly sloppy play. So there's a thing what happens where Zergs kind of, or players in general in StarCraft, we get unconfident in exactly what we think we should be doing, or we're trying to react to everything. And what suffers? Our fundamentals, our mechanics, right? So I think that's what we're going to be probably looking at, is making sure with any game plan and any strategic understanding of how to dismantle Protoss, we balance that with an understanding of the fact that we are not a 400 APM multitasking god, perfect human we're gonna make mistakes. So we wanna try to make sure the style doesn't have 50 different branches and reactions in it.
Sure.
So how ubiquitous is Void Ray play or like Stargate openings? Is that like almost all of your games against Protoss at the moment?
I would say it's like most. I would say I get cannon rushed like a third of the time, maybe, and then the rest of the time, almost all the rest of the time, it's like Void Rays into carriers. There's like your odd like, I don't know. I got like a weird zealot, like early like fast zealot with warp ray push a bit ago, and then. There's like adept timings and stuff, but like it's by and large, it's like either cannon rush or void rays usually.
No worries. So sorry, just getting that organized there. There we go. That's closed now. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so let's just start this title here. What is this? 2000 atmos. Okay. So
yeah.
I think what we can do is we can kind of do something in terms of your opening. Let's just glance at that one. So you wrote that out. You were doing Hatchgas Pool, Mass Queens, Drones, Eva, upgraded Hydraling Bane if Stargate, Lair at third base saturation into mutas if ground. And do you play like Mass Mutiling Bane in that scenario? Or is it just like one round of mutas back into ground units?
Yeah, I have been going like I just kind of like started experimenting with mass mutiling game. I mean, I've only played 40 games since I started playing again, so there aren't really that many patterns developing. But yeah. I was kind of experimenting with like mass muta, but then I'm like kind of realizing now that probably like 10 to 15 mutas into like going tier 3 with like Hydra Viper would be a little better probably with like I don't know. Like I saw Cyril making like a bunch of banelings and. Like as like a post-muta transition and roaches. I thought that would be pretty good with the Vipers.
Yeah, well, it's good to go for a kill timing. So I guess let's because you're new back to things, let's make sure we frame things in the right theoretical focus as well. ZVP. So what is the main goal in ZVP? It is to kill their army before it gets too good. Okay. They've got all the hard counters to our units. They're very slow to build. They're very expensive. They need different tech structures, upgrades, and production facilities to slowly increment them out. We have Zerg bullshit. We can build 20 of a thing at a time. They can spot a Hydrogen or a Spire. We can never use it. They don't get a lot of time to react unless we're incredibly fucking blatant, right? So if we're like, I show you my Spire when it starts, and then even though I know you've spotted it, I build mutas 3 at a time, so you see them trickling out and building up before I fly them in. It's like, okay, Protoss seems pretty broken when you play very blatantly obvious, and you give them lots of time to prepare. But what if they scout a Hydrogen, an Infestation Pit, and a Spire? What does Protoss do against that? Well, there's no clear solution. I'm not saying we have to build one of every tech structure. I'm just pointing out this nature of... So if our goal is always to kill their army before it gets good. So if you fight, you've got 30 Corruptors, they've got 20 Void Rays, terrible fight for you. You fight 30 Corruptors versus 8 Void Rays, fantastic fight for you. You can just kill them, even with Prismatic Alignment, before they can do that much damage, right? Sure. And that sort of situation is what we want to keep finding. So the thing is, how do you actually kill their army before it's good? You go for their economy to force them to fight you. Because if you just go for their army, they can always kind of pull back into a choke point or something. But that's where we can do Banes and Mineral Lions, right? Split army and attack natural and third at same time. Third and fourth at same time, right? Bane drop 2 Mineral Lions whilst attacking the front. So these are all things which kind of... The more you do that, the more you force the Protoss to come out and fight you. And a Protoss army which defending a single directional choke point that you're forcing your way into, going after that army, can be the most unstoppable thing in the world. And that army, if it's forced to split 2 or 3 locations or it gets surrounded, suddenly looks like absolute crap. Basically that's kind of just what we've got to keep in mind. It's always about that. So they have all the hard counters. So we just want to build big rounds and use the units
I saw he was
quickly.
making like all this static defense. And and I was like, okay, he's putting all this money into this. That seems like a waste of money. I'm just gonna like drone really, really hard and go super economical and like, you know. But I think I'm not as experienced with if I do that, they can just win in the late game.
Yeah, well, you need to have a very good late game plan to do that, right? So
Yeah.
you absolutely can do that, but this here is a turtle SkyToss player, so we do need to put this in its own category. Okay, so let's go right back. So at this point, you know 100% why, because there's cannons and batteries everywhere. So what is a turtle SkyToss player? This is very different. So like let's give it a more specific name. So this is a cannon turtle SkyToss, right? What's the difference? So what is your opponent missing here that they might have in a more normal setup where maybe they've gone some void rays, but they've got a bit more of a balanced situation? First one is warp gate, right? This guy never even made warp gate. So he can't even make ground units. No Twilight, no
I
Robo,
actually just
nothing.
noticed that.
So that's a huge tell. If you don't see that Cybercore spinning at all, by the time, say, the Stargate's halfway done or something like that, it's like, oh, okay. Now, keep in mind, that might not be a tell. Why? Because they might make, if they're planning to do this, normally they'll make like +1 air upgrade around this point anyway. They'll just start it so the Cybercore is spinning, and because they're going to need those air upgrades for later anyway. But anyway, basically, no warp gate, no flexibility, just static D and pure air. These sort of players usually don't even know how to make Psystorm. Like they just never do it. It's like, I'm just going to get a ton of carriers with +2 or +3 and some void rays, and I'm going to A-move you, right? They usually don't want to do that. Not always. Sometimes they'll add Storm and stuff, but they're going to be very efficient at getting up there. So if we think about it, Cannon Turtle SkyToss, that's a very specific style, right? Because they are incredibly static. So how do we define this style? Well, basically just think about it. If it's incredibly greedy and static like that, there's two things you do. Go incredibly all in or incredibly greedy into late game. Now, if we were to do an all in, Nidus is one of the best ways to break this sort of style, because if you can get in their main, then that's great. But even frontal attacks can do pretty damn well. So what's the most basic sort of attack that we could do? Let's say like 66 drone, just Hydra Bane. And you might not even have Baneling speed. You might just use slow Banelings to just crash into like cannons and shield batteries, especially if they're all stacked up close to each other.
With that?
Oh, definitely the normal height, like the groove spines and the augments. Maybe a +1 range if you want, but only one upgrade at most. Maybe +1 range, max 1 upgrade. So let's imagine you did that in this game, and let's kind of like, you know, take a look. Like, okay, so really basic, no Nidus, no queens or anything like that. Would that have worked? Because obviously the Nidus is like, you know, it's a bit of a gamble. If your army is threatening on the front while you're Nidusing, it has a much higher chance of going up. But, you know, sometimes players are really good at guarding against it. So let's take a look. So you can see here, there are some pretty clear weak points, right? It's like 4 cannons and 4 batteries on the left, and there's nothing on the natural.
Yeah.
I thought that was a full wall, by the way, but I guess it's not, hey. They do get through that diagonal. So that's a funny wall. You can't get roaches through that. They can't get stalkers through that, but they can get probes through that. Which means you could get lings through it as well, but yeah. Anyway, and then the cannons go down. Okay, so it does end up adding a lot of cannons. Let's say we did that. So, you know, you wouldn't be putting any more drones. With how you macroed in the early game, it looks like you'd probably be able to hit that around 8 minutes maybe. If you were just going Hydras and nothing else here, you weren't going for the double upgrades.
Hit what?
Sorry?
Hit what?
Big Hydra timing. That 66 drone Hydra timing. So if we were going for, I'm just saying, like, let's just look at the replay and imagine you could, like, in this game off your early macro, no 4th, no 5th, only single Evo chamber, no roach speed needed, no infestation pit needed, like none of this. Macro hatch is not really needed with the roach Hydra style as well. If you wanted, it would just be, oh, I guess I'll start a 4th hatchery as a macro hatch. So let's say you hit 8 minutes, 30. What are we actually fighting into at that stage with a big Hydra Bane timing? Let's go 8:30. Let's imagine we hit kind of late. So your opponent, if we look at their units tab, has literally no units, right? 6 Void
Yeah,
Rays, 3
almost
Adepts.
nothing.
It's just cannons and batteries. So, I mean, that definitely makes us think about like Nidus or like even Mass Drop,
Yeah.
right? Is the other option, actually.
Yeah. The
Mass
first thing that
Hydra
came to
Queen
mind
Drop.
was like a big Overlord drop.
Yeah, because it's a bit more reliable than the Nidus in a way. Your opponent
Yeah.
here has watched King Cobra this last week beat Clement Marine Lord and is getting the Macro Nexus in the main. What a fucking troll.
Okay.
So this is because they're very gas starved, and this way they can spam chrono on their double upgrades, which this player's only just started their 1+1 really late, and they can also chrono their Stargates like nonstop. It's actually not the absolute worst thing in the world, as silly as it is, but yeah, we can kind of see at this point there's very few units. We got like 25, 30 Hydras in, be pretty game ending. What if we had like, I don't know, 12 Banelings and 20, 25 Hydras? I still think if we just hit that natural, right? You could just start a step
Crash
forward.
through the cannons. Yeah.
Yeah, just click the battery down with like some Banelings, and it'll get like a cannon or two with that splash as well. And then you can just like run forward and focus fire things. You'll lose some Hydras and stuff. You'll be rallying Zerglings only. But yeah, you could probably just kill them. And I think that's like a common thing is that's the most simple way to just solve this without having to go through any of the extra stuff. Is just, oh, my opponent's going turtle. That's a really basic all-in we can do. The other one, like we said, is either try to do mass drop, adding queens, or the Nidus. Now that both of those, especially the drop option, it could take you a little bit longer to hit. And obviously there's things like if these 3 carriers get out and max their interceptors, that's going to make things much harder, right? So there is a drastic difference between hitting at 8 minutes 30 and hitting at 9 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
And that's what ZVP often has, especially because most people are being so greedy like this. There's these really sharp edges. So just remember, sometimes you'll hit with the timing. You'll happen to hit just after that point. We can always look at little things for how we can improve our macro, that sort of stuff. And it should hopefully dodge most of those timings where your opponent just suddenly gets a power spike right as you're hitting.
Yeah. So let's say right now I went the like spam economy route, like way harder than I have 100 drones right now. So
the opposite direction.
So yeah, I went the opposite direction. So and this guy ended up, I mean, you'll see when we finish, he ended up getting a bunch of carriers. He never got a 4th, or he might have gotten a 4th, but you know, despite my like massive economy, I just like couldn't break him. So like what, like if they already have carriers up, you know, like what do you do at that point?
So what you don't do is if you're going to play a mass economy game, you don't play a Hydras. If you want to, you'd need to do it with Infestors with Microbial Shroud, but that's a very dicey composition because you're even more hoping your opponent doesn't know how to make splash damage, whether it be Disruptors or Storm.
Wait,
right?
what's Microbial Shroud?
That's the new Infestor ability that replaced Infested Terran. So basically it's like, do you know Brood War Dark Swarm?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. You put it on your own units, but it blocks 50% of enemy air damage. So you use it basically just against like carriers, mass void rays, mass battle cruisers, and you just plump it on top of your queens or hydralisks or your spore crawlers so that they can just survive the carriers a bit better. Quite a lot better, in fact. But that commits you to a ground army, which is just not ideal because it's really hard to force fights. So if you're going to play late game, we do want to see, especially against this very turtled up style, I think we want to see a much more drastic switch. Okay, so my favorite way to do it, because it avoids all the difficulty of us tripping over 2 different spellcasters plus Brood Lords to deal with the ground swap plus mass queens and infested Microbial Shroud or mass corruptor Viper and this and that, and us building 300 spore crawlers across the map. You can try that out, and if you really enjoy late game, go for it. But what I would actually advise is double melee upgrade. Lingbane Ultra. So you can still go the double Spire when you get a big enough economy like you're doing here. But instead of building Hydras in this scenario, you build no anti-air. So other than just like 10 queens for anti-air, all on a control group. So you can use them for injecting, but that way you can like scramble them all over if you need to defend, and you can add spores. But the idea is, other than some Void Rays poking early, which 10 Queens defends, and like maybe a few spores on the edges where needed, maybe you struggle to take your 4th base, so you build a spore or 2 there or something like that. That's going to defend up until there's like 4+ carriers attacking you, and at that point, you've got Bane speed, and you're starting to do things like, ooh, I got like, say their army's out of position where your Hydras are right now. You could be like say they're somewhere in the middle of the map trying to push you or pressure or whatever, out where your Hydras are, you could just have like 30 speed banes and 50 Zerglings, which that sounds like a lot of units. It's only 40 army supply. And those banelings will clear those cannons and batteries in about 2 seconds, and you're in that third mineral line. And you could do the same thing on the natural as well, is you can just start to smash through their static. So you can basically be working on those air upgrades, getting ready for a big hard swap into Corruptors when you need to, but you're trying to just basically say, I'll just base trade and just throw Ling Bane at you in the meantime and just keep overwhelming you. And like often what you'll even do is they usually don't have cannons in front of the natural wall, but even if they do, like you'll just click the Banelings on the Cybercore to open that natural wall up sometimes, and that'll kill an air upgrade that's upgrading, stop their +2 or their +3 from finishing, and it'll also open the wall up, and then you get Lings in the main and the natural, especially if they have Adrenal or anything. Holy shit, like, 10 Lings in each of those mineral lines, their economy's gone, and they just can't keep producing, and you're still on your 80, 90 drones, whatever it is. So that's a really good way of just punishing your opponent, and you actually see pros do this a fair bit.
Okay.
So Ling Bane Ultra.
Would you? And I'm guessing you would mix in like, would you mix in like Overlord drops and stuff too? That's what I'm assuming you would.
If you want to get nice and stylish, like it's a good idea to do, but I don't think it's really necessary until you're very comfortable with the build. Like I would be more like,
Okay.
nah, let's just smush some Ling Bane in here and here. Like, oh, army's on the right side. Okay, I'll smush it in on the left. Like you've got your two armies split, and you're like, okay, army's on the right. I smash in the left side and go for the third. Then when they pull over to defend to that, the right side swings in towards the natural, right? I just keep rinsing and repeating that. I always say, like,
how does building up your corruptors work? You said Ling Bang Ultra Corruptor. Would you go like fast Hive and Ultras and then start building up your Corruptor army, or like
you don't build your Corruptors till they attack you? So that's like literally, if they attack you, you're willing to just give up bases and stuff if you have to. But the idea is like you'd rather just win with a base trade even. So if they're like coming across like a desperate 5 carrier push, but you've already killed most of the cannons and batteries, you just keep base trading with Ling Bane essentially. Just keep holding down the Zergling key, because Lings are just such a good base trade unit. They do so much more damage than anything else. Especially with like Adrenal, they just tear buildings down like no tomorrow. So the Corruptors are just there, like if your opponent defends and survives well enough, you're like, oh, okay, now I'll build like 40 Corruptors in one go after throwing a big wave of Ling Bane Ultra. And then I'm going to like dive them straight across the map and like focus down the carriers or something like that, right? The idea is, though, we don't be like, oh, I'll add 6 Corruptors and now 12 Corruptors and now 18, because what does that do? Remember what I talked about earlier? Slowly inkling your way into a composition gives them time to counter it. And you want to kind of go for something hard, surprise them with it, dive in their trade. That's when it's most effective. Also, because Corruptors only shoot air, like if they've still got a lot of like cannons and batteries and they're just camping above it, it's kind of hard to engage on that with Corruptors, right? And if you build, say, 30, 40 Corruptors, that's 60 to 80 army supply, which you can't use to kill their economy and stuff. So if you can't find the fight on their air army, you've just lost your ability to do Ling Bane run-bys and Ultra run-bys because you've chewed up all your supply on it. So suddenly all that activity and pressure and ability to base trade that you've had up to that point, you lose it all. So if they push you, you can't base trade with Corruptors, right? Number one. Number two, it gives them time to just build up the counters and so on. So we're trying to basically say, I'm going to almost ignore your air and do it that way. And if you build a big enough economy, you can also add lots of spores to cement position off 100 drones, as the game goes long enough, right? Now you can add Vipers for Parasitic Bomb. That's bonus point. Both of these are bonus points.
So the Vipers would be for the bomb rather than pulling the carriers?
Yep. Yeah, because it's the only reason we want to go to something that complicated is if our opponent has mass Void Ray.
Oh, I see. So you would use the bomb on the what? Can you use the bomb to kill interceptors?
Yeah, but it's kind of hard.
Okay.
So basically, the problem is that because you can't actually target the interceptors, you need to just kind of what people will do is like if you just put it on their carriers and then you just fly your Corruptors right on top of their carriers, the carriers are shooting interceptors on top of themselves, basically, right? Where the Parasitic Bomb is. So the interceptors, by swooping the Corruptors that are kind of on top of the carriers, are also getting hit by Parasitic Bomb. So that's one way. Sometimes you'll see people do that. They'll drop a few Parasitic Bombs across the carriers and they'll fly their Corruptors right on top. And then you see all the interceptors die. I've seen people
Yeah.
also do that, and there's a bunch of Archons though, and all the Corruptors pop. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is not the scenario to do that. Not when they've got a lot of splash damage as well. Don't be clumping those Corruptors. But yeah, that can be one nice way of doing it. But I prefer to think of it like, let's just think of it as, are Vipers good units? Yes. Are you using your Abducts pretty well here? Yes. Technically, if you did have Corruptors, but you weren't able to like just dive them and finish the game, yeah, Vipers are really good for abducting and picking off units. But that's a real like slow burn efficiency thing. And we want to keep things a little bit more like direct and like, no, I threw a big wave of units and I try to fuck you up with it, like that sort of thing.
I see. Okay.
Dude, I love your Zergling drop towards the main. So you want to remember when you do this, though, you want to go in with like 50 Zerglings because you could fit 8 in each Overlord.
The reason is that's actually what I was going to do, but I have so many drones that I'm just constantly at 200 supply. And,
Yep.
So I just didn't have enough like supply to do a big Zerg. That was like my goal.
Yeah.
Then I was like, if I go down any more supply, my Hydra army is going to be like minuscule. So.
Yeah. Well, you actually, the thing is, look at this. You actually ended up breaking him not with Ling Bane counterattacks, but just by kind of like smacking through with like Hydras and stuff and doing some multi-prongs. So like, you know, you still got these old positional, high level kind of RTS instincts and stuff, which is great. I think, I think it's just here. You need to just realize like your opponent has one punch, right? 14 carriers, about to have 16, like an insane army supply. So you just like need to basically trade off your Hydras. And then replace it all with Corruptors. And if I were you, I'd be like a little cautious because like, well, you don't actually have, your opponent's upgrades suck balls for 13 minutes in the game, which is very good for you. Otherwise, I'd probably be waiting for my 2/2 to kick in and you to get +2 armor. But I would have my Corruptors split off away from my Hydras, right? 100%. And I would I'd probably be building spores because you've got so much minerals, right? At this point, the idea is, if you are going to start going for a frontal clash, which you're probably going to be forced to do because you're not building those Zerglings and Banelings ready for a base trade, which would simplify things, actually, if we think about it, right? Because we don't even need to build anything to counter the carriers. We could just wait for him to come out with the counter attack, that one all in, and we just smash this wall down and just kill all the buildings. Never need to fight the carriers. Easiest win condition. But if we need to make sure we have not just, oh, I spent my money and free supply on Corruptors. It's, I traded my entire shitty ground army of Hydras out for Corruptors, and I killed 30 drones into Spore Crawlers or something like that. And I waited for all those Corruptors to get out, which, by the way, you've only got 2,500 gas right now. So we can see, ooh, you probably didn't get like your gases on this base, your 5th base early enough, right? For this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
so
probably not.
If we're playing
that's another thing that I've been struggling
game,
with is like when to get gases.
I think that's kind of like, if you're going this late game style, get the 10 gases ASAP is kind of the rule, basically. So you probably don't ever need 12 gases unless you're going insane on the gas count. But if you want to just take them just to get ahead, like in these situations, I'll often just take the gases straight away and overmine gas, even if I'm mining it on a 6th base as well, which you did start doing. But yeah, you're mining so much gas a minute, like 2,000 gas a minute. Like, yeah, you wait another minute, you've easily got enough gas to make 45 Corruptors on top of the, 12, 11 that you've got out. And then that's going to you just run in, you just shift click the carriers. You just make sure you focus fire them, and that's good. The problem with Hydra Corruptor is those are two different armies. It's kind of like using Marines and Vikings. So Marines or Hydras, the way they beat carriers is by having enough to just kill all the interceptors. Whereas the way Corruptors or Vikings kill carriers is by focus firing them. So if you end up with half and half, it's like you might not have enough to kill the interceptors. You're kind of like doing two different competing things. It's easier to have all in one. And then you're like, oh yeah, just have enough Corruptors, go in, smack it all down. If you actually wanted to, you probably could have done this with pure Hydras, just because your upgrades are so much better than him. But we normally wouldn't advise it because it's like, you've got to make sure you've got the numbers and stuff. Whereas we can just see that he's got such a bigger army than you right now, and you should be the one with the bigger army for sure. Those 11 queens you've got, they're not going to take part in this. You're not thinking of those as army supply right now. So it's really important to either trade some of those queens off or actually think about making sure they're there. And looking at your bank, yeah, we could have 30 spore crawlers out here, right? So get back to those spores. Those are going to bleed out a lot of the interceptors before the fight really happens. So if you're going like mass corruptor, you kind of wait for them to engage through your spores a little bit, because your corruptors are going to have to just dive way on top, right? So, you know, whereas Hydras can fight with spore crawlers, because then it's just like having extra Hydras mixed in to gun down the interceptor count.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, I felt like my army supply this game was like really weird the whole time because I built so many drones that it was just and then here my army's just getting wreckety ruhad.
Yeah, so that's what's
Yeah.
so good, right? Because you never want to fight army versus army when you're at this drone count. So going this drone count is good. Lingbane style fits it more because you can just be more base trade focused. Your whole strategy is I don't want to
see.
fight you front on, right? And when you get to say, I think 5K is a good number. Just, I've got 5,000 minerals. Okay, I can drop down to 70 workers now. Like, let's turn 30 of these into spore crawlers. So that can almost be like a rule. So I'll add this, right? So basically, as a little note here, I'll say like 5K minerals is enough bank. Drop from 100 drones down to 70, right? And you could even go lower than that, technically, right? If your opponent has a super sick army, you really want to respect it. You don't really need to. Honestly, Corruptors are so good. Like this sort of scenario, there's not many Void Rays. You've got better upgrades. Like you could have had maybe even slightly less army supply and still beat this if it was like pure Corruptor, right? It's just the fact that like you've got to remember that you've got 11 queens, which chews up a lot of supply. You've got so many more workers, and then you were split between like Hydras and Corruptors, and you kind of fought him with like a small chunk of army and then a small chunk. It's easy when you're winning the game like you were to kind of just go, oh, I'm winning. Oh, my opponent's coming to fight. Let's fight. And it's like, you've got to kind of remember, it's like every time you're winning against this economy. You never were killing his army. So all that's happening is he's just becoming more and more supercharged on that one punch army. That punch is powering up. It's becoming stronger. As long as we keep that in mind, we respect it. We supercharge our army before fighting. We've got this in the bag easy.
I see.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to like bait a fight here to pull back to the spore crawlers, but then that didn't really work out because he baiting the fight. He killed more than I killed.
Yeah, and it's because because you got competing units, right? Your Hydras kind of want to get behind the spores and fight, but your Corruptors kind of like, oh, I need to focus fire the carriers. So it's just, it makes it hard for yourself when you've got that army. Like this is not a situation I'm looking at going, wow, Loftimus, you're so low level, dude. What is this shit fight? It's the situation you put yourself in. Like that's like anyone would have lost the game from the moment that Hydra army got caught coming home. It would have been very hard. Could it have been done? Yes. It would have involved just running away, rebuilding a spire in the bottom right, running away, rallying your Corruptors over to the bottom right, rally away, avoid the fight, keep building Corruptors, keep building Corruptors. Okay, I've got 40 Corruptors, now I can take the fight. And then you could have won the game. Just avoid that fight until you've got that massive Corruptor army, and that's kind of a good golden rule. So this is really what's good about the Lingbane style, even though it's so different to a normal style. And I normally wouldn't be like, yeah, let's just play Lingbane versus SkyToss. This is such a...
It's kind of unintuitive going Lingbane Ultra against SkyToss.
It is, isn't it?
Because back in the day, I don't think I ever built a single Ultralisk against Protoss. I was like Infestor Broodlord like turtle back when like Stefano was doing that all day.
That was the way to play. That was when I won tournaments through absolute skill. Definitely not an overpowered Infestor that literally is still one of my favorite units because I've just hit so many money shots with it, and it doesn't do anywhere near the amount of damage, and it doesn't completely lock units down like it used to. But I mean, many a game used to be won with 3 Infestors holding a choke point against like 1,000 units coming up it, because you just literally, it was a force field and it did almost double the damage it does now to armored units. So Infestor's still pretty good first ground units, Infestor Broodlord. But this is like a good style. So I do think you can do this sort of Lingbane style, like I said, versus even a more standard SkyToss. The dangerous thing is, of course, some people will just go like 6 Void Rays into like Charge Lot Archon if they get very heavy Charge Lot.
I see.
Archon. Banelings are good versus Zealots.
Lings can be pretty good against the Charge Lots because you have the Banes exploding.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is if they're good enough at multi-pronging, right? So if you suddenly find a drop goes whoops in 10 Zealots in your main, and there's 10 Zealots attacking into your 4th, and then there's some Archon Zealot on the front, you need to try to get Banelings into the center of all those Zealots. And that's suddenly where Banelings become very hard to use. One frontal engagement, beautiful. Get rid of the Zealots. Yeah. As long as they don't have like 12 Archons, your Zerglings can kind of just surround and kill them quick enough that it's okay. Obviously, those Archons get in a choke point, and it's a big no. So there are situations where it can get a little dicey. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit there and say Lingbane is the most solid, ground army of all time. Any sort of Zealot or Adept all in. Its approaches are better than Zerglings. And Loftimus, don't worry. guys, this here is the voice of Twitch chat. You guys can let us know in Twitch chat. You've all the Zergs who have clicked on this because of the title, I think, have said the same thing. They're like, what the fuck is this? We watched Solar lose a bunch of games the other week. Similar sort of scenario where we thought he won, but then he just did not. He was still on Hydras and he just didn't have enough army supply to actually fight the one punch carrier all in that eventually came across the map.
Yeah. Yeah, I never would have thought of the Ling Ultra, because I guess that preps you for tier 3 a lot faster. And so you're saying basically you're saying just keep pushing in, keep trying to trade, like don't kill his army, kill bases, kill like base trade if you can, and then swap it all out for corruptors and fight under spores at the end. If like they're still alive.
And you might
That's
not even
pretty much
need to
the
fight
summary.
under the spores. Like it's just and potentially in the end base trade, right? If it's anything like this game, you actually should just not even fight that army. You should just keep building Ling Bane. So it's either just win by base trade or win by eventual swap into mass corruptor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would like a Muta style work here? So like I remember like when everyone was doing that like partying Sentry Immortal push, like my thing for that would be I just base trade with Mutas and Zerglings. And that worked like 2/3 of the time, I would say, like maybe like 3/4.
You totally
like,
can
is that a thing here? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is, so many people are so Void Ray focused, and their scouting can best be described as I don't know how to Shiza. I think that's the only language I know how to say shit in other than English. Is terrible. They're just sitting there. I mean, I in my bronze to GM, I've started doing Mutaplay in all matchups, Mutaling Bane.
Yeah.
And I'm in
cool.
kind of Diamond 1, getting close to Masters at the moment. And I play people who
I've
see
been
my
watching
Spire.
those, by the way, over the past week.
Oh, awesome. The last episode, I saw a few people scout my Spire. And I'm like, okay, he's going to make Phoenix, so we won't build the mutas this time. We're going to be clever. We're going to instead, like, just play the Ling Bane for now and, blah, blah, blah. And I'd, like, scout again with another, like, Overseer. It's like, oh, he's still just building Void Rays. Okay. Like, he didn't build a single Phoenix. No worries. Like, these guys aren't reacting at all because they're not actually looking at their scouting. And I'm like, that's fair enough. How many times have I, as a pretty highly ranked GM Protoss player, scouted the Spire and then not realized I saw said Spire? It happens all the time. So,
I've done that many times.
If you do that, mass gas, right? It's surprise first wave, goes straight for workers, right? With your mutas. And then swap into Corruptors to beat Phoenix, right? So it's more Mutas versus more Void Rays and more Phoenix, Corruptors versus Phoenix. So you want your Corruptors in front of your Mutas tanking against the Phoenix. Because the Phoenix, they just kind of shoot whatever's in front of them and they can move while they shoot and stuff. Obviously, it's
Would you put them on different hotkeys, or would you do like same hotkey and then like control click the?
I'd probably do control click micro, but I think it's real personal choice on that one. So I think like some people might do different control groups, and then maybe you're sick of moving 2 control groups around all the time. So you just like tell the mutas to follow the corruptors or something. You just right click on a corruptor and you just like tell your corruptor squad to go around, and then when the actual fighting starts, you like do a bit more active micro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good style. So obviously, rush 5 base 10 gas if you want to do that. I don't know if you can find any Bly games, but Bly does this fantastically.
Okay, cool.
Don't see how many macro games you see of him, but yeah.
I've been pretty zoned in on watching Cyril and Raynor because I figured I don't want to spread myself too thin with like limited time if I'm gonna like.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if you'll find too many Bly VODs that easily because so many of them are in online cups where a lot of the VODs don't get posted on YouTube. I know I've cast him on Blackburn especially, but on Jagannatha sometimes as well. Do that. So I guess we're still in this replay, so I should kind of show it again a little bit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to check the opening a little bit and kind of look at what went on because you got a really sick work account out real early. And you had no safety structure, so yeah, this is. Yep, you've adapted to the Stargate meta, that's for sure, dude. That's so funny. Let's actually. I think with this Twitch chat might actually have some really good kind of pointers as well because they're all dealing with the same thing. So I'm just very quickly glancing at it as well. Someone said they think actually.
I haven't even looked at the.
No worries. Someone said they think Hydra Microbial Shroud, like the Infestor ability, is easier.
Oh yeah.
Then Corruptor Viper.
I didn't even know that it existed, so that's
Yeah.
good to know.
I
Infestors
disagree.
no longer have
I think it's
infested Terrans.
easier to handle if your opponent's a baboon because it kind of relies on them not just like moving away. Like it's easy to run out of the microbial shroud energy. It's very hard to like actually push and trade with it. So it's kind of the same problem as just going straight mass corruptor for me, where I feel like it's really hard to actually push into like cannons and stuff like that and static defense. And if they do go ground splash, like even if they just had Colossus against that, Disruptors, Storm, it's such an immobile army that kind of relies on the Protoss attacking into you with a bad fight. So for me, it's the same thing is if we lock ourselves in a composition that relies on the opponent coming to us and handing us an engagement, that by its very definition for me is not what we want to do against a guy whose whole game plan is camping in his corner of the map till he's got some supreme maxed army and then fights on his terms. In general, in StarCraft, as every race, fighting on my opponent's terms equals a big no. Like for me, strategy at its core is not doing what the other guy wants. Like if I wanted to like what's a good rule for good StarCraft, let's fuck with the opponent as much as possible is probably a good rule. Don't if a Terran comes to your side of the map, it has like this sick looking marine tank army setting up on a ledge. Like number one rule is don't fight it. Go attack elsewhere, you know? Give up a base if you have to, right? Like this is such a golden rule as a Zerg that you should always stick by is like don't fight where the other guy wants you to fight. Like, you know, you're mobile and nimble. You don't have to just be one dimensional. So I think that's a good way of doing it. But
does Life still play? 'Cause that's very Life-esque of a mindset. Do you remember he's a Zerg player? I don't know if he still plays.
Yeah, he threw a bunch of games for money because of his crippling gambling addiction and is like literally I call him Voldemort as a joke because like Koreans don't even like to like talk about his name or mention that he exists because that was a huge match fixing scandal when that got investigated by the police in Korea and revealed, and like a whole bunch of sponsors left Pro League around that time. So that was like part of the reason why Pro League died in Korea for StarCraft 2, 7 years after the first big match fixing scandal in Brood War. So Koreans don't like to talk about it. So he who must not be named.
I think I heard something about that.
They took his banner down at BlizzCon. They have all the BlizzCon champions, and everyone was like,
"Oh my
hey,
god,
who won 2013 or 2014? 2014."
yeah. Damn, I had forgotten about all that. I think I heard about it like once, but I just remember his like super hyper aggressive style.
Absolute legend, man, dude. Absolute legend. Yeah, he was all backstabs and just he felt his way through the game of StarCraft for sure. Yeah, whenever I'm talking, if me and Alazer get in a discussion about greatest of all time, where we both just gush about Life and how good he was for the time, we're just like, oh my god, he's the best. He was so good.
Yeah.
Such a bummer. There's still a thread every now and then on like StarCraft Reddit. They're like, if Life was still playing, would he fucking dominate everybody today? People are like, well, we don't know. Maybe he's pretty damn good at the time.
Sorry.
No, go.
So should I basically just like not build a single Hydra, or like
if you're playing defensive, for sure, just go straight Ling Bane for sure. And you've already got 9 queens and a big macro opening. So I mean, the only problem I have with your opening is that like if you don't know it's Stargate and you play like this, what you did this game, obviously it's very greedy. But you saw a Stargate with a Void Ray in the wall.
Stargate. That's why I was playing like that.
Yeah, I mean, a bit more map vision would be really nice, right? In this whole period, just a few Ling spotters out there would be really good. Other than that, though, I mean, I think you've done really great here. The Overlords on the edges are really good as well, right? Because even if Void Rays come in, you give them an Overlord, but, well, that's kind of important if you want it. If they're going to try and snipe your lair or something cheeky like that, you know?
Yeah, right. Okay, cool.
Yeah, dude. So Hydra's only if you want to go for the all-in option. But yeah, try the Ling Bane option. I think it'll be really good. I think also there's a lot of players, especially the ones who don't go. This is like the canon version of SkyToss. The players who don't go the canon version, I think they die to almost any Hydra A move. Like if you just do a 3 base, don't drone your 4th, make Hydras and just go for a Hydra Bane attack, I think you'll almost always kill them. I see a lot of people play just insanely greedy. But this sort of player is harder to break.
That would be like fully saturated 3 bases. You have a 4th base, but you don't drone it.
Yeah.
You have like maybe +1 missile or +2. You have groove spines. Groove spines finishes, and that's when you attack, or do you wait for the Hydra speed and then you attack after
I
that?
mean, if
I
you're
forget
going
what
for a full
the-
3 base of workers, you hopefully can get both upgrades, but you could attack before. I mean, you can be poking
Okay.
in either changelings or zerglings and look at what you're up against, right? You could be like, oh, this guy doesn't have anything. Let's just fucking go with like 8 hydralisks and 10 zerglings, right? You know,
see.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, you're like, well, he doesn't even have a cannon or a battery. Like, let's just jump on this third. He's just like a sentry and a void ray standing there. You know, you'll find
Yeah.
that sometimes. It's like, okay, go for it. Well, other times you're like,
If I-
okay, no, he actually has a good set of units. Let's wait for 20 Hydras, both upgrades to kick in, morph the 10 Banelings, even if they don't have Baneling speed, so we can click them on these 3 shield batteries or whatever. And then, like, that's, you know, so you could be a little flexible with it, but you can come up with your own rules. So you might have one that works most of the time. That's your default. And then you scout for, oh, okay, in this case, I'll wait a little bit longer or I'll go a bit earlier.
And if I'm going the Hydra all-in route, do I get a group spines first or the speed first, or is that like kind of
Probably speed. Usually speed's a bit better because you can just get underneath stuff, but it's very up to you. Because obviously the groove spines shooting further is like pretty sick. It's just generally just getting on top and just like focusing units down is the more important thing. Especially with the way shield batteries work, right? Because you got to focus them down, or you've got to just focus units down before it gets a chance to heal them. Because the whole reason Void Rays are so good at defending, especially, is they can just kind of fly backwards over buildings. So if you're just A moving, it's really easy for them to just like pull back weak Void Rays if they've got good micro.
Yeah.
So generally, yeah, being able to like move forward, focus fire is kind of a bit more important than setting up a nice concave and having everything shooting in an arc all at once.
I see. Cool.
Cool, dude. Dude, this was a very smooth opening. You've got good creep spread. You've still got some nice mechanics there and so on. So
Yeah. They're still
coming
in
from-
there somewhere, coming out.
hells
All
yeah.
the rust.
Hells yeah, dude. So we've still got a little bit of time. Let me see. How long have we got? We've got 10, 30, about 13 minutes or so. So do you want to quickly look at another replay, maybe a different matchup, or just go over some theory?
Sure. Let's see here. There was the well, I have the 2 SkyToss replays that I prepared. There's probably some other replays that I would want to look at, but it might take too much time to find them. Yeah, I guess if we had more time, it would be fun to do a ladder game, but I think probably not enough time for that. So I guess we can go into the other replay that I found. That might be the most time efficient.
Yeah, let's take a look at that then.
Let me just find it. Shaganatha LE 16. There's 18.
But yeah, I think generally it's like for the people watching in Twitch chat, what they don't necessarily catch on with is your macro is exceptional. So what's a benchmark for that for people? If your opponent's being very turtly, just make me the lobby host again.
Oh yeah.
So I can steer the replay. I'm an old-fashioned man. I need to be behind the wheel. Don't touch the stereo in my car. You had 3 bases full 6 minutes. You were at about 65 drones. 6 minutes. So that's kind of the benchmark. Is to if they're just being very turtly and defensive, no pressure from Protoss, you absolutely should be hitting 66 drones at the 6 minute mark. So that's kind of the benchmark, which I was kind of surprised that you hit in that game. You only had 6 queens, so you weren't like, going up to like 8 queens, but your opponent also wasn't even harassing with a single void ray, right? There wasn't even 1 or 2 void rays poking. So what you did felt very good as like an instinctive Zerg player who is doing things. I like that your drone chased off the probe. That's very good. Just make sure you're not getting cannon rushed. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we see another interesting wall off from a Protoss player. Okay.
Interesting, yes.
Interesting. Into a safety shield battery. Okay. All right. So your opponent's actually going warp gate this game. So his Stargate's a solid 40 seconds late because his opening just wasn't that smooth. So this is actually really, really good for you because it means, once again, there's no sharp pressure coming across the map. There's not even an Oracle could be hitting you this game. I noticed you're not building spores. This is great. So many people panic spore really early Yours are kind of like on the very late end of Spore Crawler timing. And I don't know if that's because you just said, oh, his Stargate's halfway done. I'll build spores in about 30, 40 seconds. Or if it's just a game
that's
timer.
what I did.
Good.
Yeah,
That's
you see, I'm like building them slowly right now. I'm going to add the second one in soon, and then the third. Or the third one, I guess. I already built the second.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, you're building queens anyway. Even if an Oracle surprises you, he did go Oracle first, who cares? The opportunity cost of building those spores is way too expensive if you just blindly rush them every game, which too many players do. They're like, oh, well, I lost units to this, so therefore I'm going to build spores early every game. And I'm like, yep, well, you just did the damage for the Protoss by building spores before you needed to. You build 3 spores, it costs you 7.5 drones opportunity cost, not to mention the fact that you're building it 20 seconds plus before they hit, often 40, 50 seconds before they hit, which means you're losing even more mining time on the 3 drones that turn into the spores, not to mention the opportunity cost from the mineral spent. It's a effing nightmare. It really is. It damages you. So what you've done here, 5 minutes 50, we're at 60 drones, 11 more coming out. That's 70 drones on 6 minutes. Like, once again, we have hit fantastic macro. If people start hitting you with Glaive Adept follow-ups afterwards, that's where you're completely weak against it. Being active with Zergling poking, and also when your lair finishes, I mean, you go such a late lair, probably you've just got to be active with Zergling poking. And your Roach Warren might need to go down earlier, just for safety. So against, like, say you wanted to be safe, maybe like 440 against a Stargate opening is kind of, you might want to note that down as like if you start getting hit by adept times. I think, honestly, it's better to be greedy. Just like be greedy for now. Just write a note. If I start dying, they're like, oh, it's a Void Ray, and then they hit me with Glaive Adepts or a Charge Lot all in, where they were pretending to take a third, but they weren't really probing it, and then bam, there's tons of Adepts or tons of, okay, like I can then start getting that Roach Warren on that safety timing that I've kind of noted for myself. If no Protoss are doing that build, we don't need to play safe first. And this is something a lot of people kind of rebel against. They're like, no, I've got to be safe first everything. But you're experienced enough. That's kind of not great StarCraft. You can't be safe first everything. If all your opponent's race are not doing a certain thing, we don't need to preemptively counter it. We can lose a few ladder games once it becomes popular, and then shift, right? So that'll be. I
was pretty annoyed here, by the way.
Don't
really
fucking fight into it. Yeah, there's 2 ways you fight with battery overcharge. You kill the battery with an immediate surround, which is the first thing you should have done here. So that was your problem, because you got surface area. If you click on that shield battery, and you could even shift click some lings around the right to hit it from behind as well, and hit the other shield battery. They only have 300 hit points. They die quicker than a pylon. Oh, they do? So they die really quick if they have surface area.
I just noticed that.
Yeah, they go down real quick, dude. Real quick. Yeah. So that should always be your highest priority. If you only come in with like 8 Zerglings now, I wouldn't bother, right? I'd just be like, okay, focus some probes and then run away kind of thing. But you've got a lot of Zerglings. It's a good opportunistic dive here. Absolutely, go for the battery first thing. So just train yourself to do that.
Well, I thought I could kill the sentry even through the battery, but I was clearly wrong. It's like sentries are so weak.
You could have. Do you know how you had to do it? You needed to move your Zerglings back and forth past the sentry so that they're maintaining a surround, and then you click it so they all attack at once, or you A move. But you've got to stop them attacking for a moment. So the problem is their attacks here are all staggered. So because they're attacking all at different times, the sentry's getting time to heal it. So if you look at it, how many Zerglings are hitting it right now? Actually, you've only got surface area with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times 5 is what, 35 damage? Actually, Zerglings probably can't do it. Most units, if you shoot all at once, you can kill, Roaches, Hydras, Marines, etc. You have like 12 Stim Marines. Units don't even get a chance to get healed by the battery. Sometimes if it changes healing targets, there can be a slight delay when it swaps from one thing to another. So that's where you can get a kill. But okay. I was like, you know what? Actually, Zerglings can do this. No, they can't. Zerglings are the one unit that rule doesn't apply to. Just kill the battery or back off and come back in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I killed all his probes here. And so I was like, okay, I'm like in a really, really good position now, and then, of course, later on, he ends up killing me with carriers, which is why I selected this game. So I was like, okay, I'm like really ahead now. I just killed all his probes and.
Well, it was a lot of Zerglings that you did trade, so it was an okay trade. It would have been better if you killed the probes and then pulled back with your Zerglings, but you're also, your setup, if you just actually committed to a Queen Walk, that would be great. If you were doing nothing but building queens, and this is a good map for a Queen Walk because you've got these speedy zones, So you could grab
Yeah.
every single queen, including your injecting ones, build more queens at home. They can replace your injecting queens, right? And then you just walk across. As long as by the time you get to their base, you have like 10 roaches, most of which morph into ravagers, and you rally nothing but zerglings behind that. 10 ravagers, 8 or 10 queens, mass zergling. It's one of the best ways to kill a Protoss who's not doing one of those straight cannon builds. Like this player, they've done some adept harass. They've made ground tech. They're trying to get Twilight Council. You know, they're doing a hybrid style. This is what I talked about. These guys are much easier to kill than that last game. Remember 830 in that last game? Obviously, there's been some Zergling interaction in this game. It's a little different. But in general, this is a guy who played ground. This is a guy who has a bit more. He got Warp Gate. He's made Adepts. He's made an Immortal. 830 in that last game, there was like 12 cannons and 6 shield batteries. It's kind of hard to break. But I was like, oh, we probably still can because he has so few actual units. Well, in this case, 2 cannons only now finishing, which you might even be able to just run in and focus down with your Zerglings ahead of your push, right? You could just like run in and kill those. They can't get healed while they're building. And then like, bam, in come your Hydras or whatever. It's like, okay, that's cool. And carriers are kind of shit. Just 2 carriers on their own, really bad versus like 15, 16 Hydras. Because like the interceptors are just going to die as they're popping out, right? You don't even have any pressure to get underneath them, right? It's like, hey, I'm killing your third base. Your carriers need to fight. Interceptors die. You kill the third, easy from there. So the problem you had is not that your opening's bad. It's just you didn't have like a super clear game plan of what your next step was here, right? Because you ended up kind of massing roaches and making a lot of queens, but then you didn't really walk with them. And then you're like, oh, I'll just add upgrades and drone, right? So it's just that your timing is going to very slowly disappear. You're a little ahead. You had great macro. You did a little bit of damage with your Zerglings. Did a little bit more here. None of this is game ending. He did run his probes away. It's good. Don't get me wrong. This is great trades for you. And now we're going double Spire, which we saw in the previous game. It's a different direction. So your early game setup is great. What you were lacking here was a very clear game plan, which of course is going to hurt us more against these sort of weird, static late game styles. But I think the lesson carries over to your Zerg vs. Zerg and your Zerg vs. Terran as well. You're probably going to have moments where you get set up in a good economy. And this is kind of the learning process of StarCraft that you're re-engaging with, right? It's like you've got a good opening, you know how to react to this to get to a good spot. How do you actually turn that into an advantage? You've got to define some attack timings. And that's what we've done a lot of today. Whether it be I'm just making Ling Bane off, 80 drones and starting to throw it at my opponent, droning to 100 drones behind it, and then throwing more and more waves of Ling Bane against them while adding the corrupt attack. So that's some attack timings that we kind of defined. That's more of the loose one because it's a bit more reflexive based on how they're playing. But if you're playing against a Terran, maybe you're a little bit more focused on like, oh, I mass Ling Bane off 66 drones, and then when they come to push me, I crush that attack and I counter attack and I try to kill them. And if I can't kill them, then I drone to 80 workers. But the point is you want to have hard cutoff points on your workers, a clear knowledge of exactly what tech you're going and exactly what sort of attacks you're looking for with that. And that's something as you get better in each matchup, you want to keep evolving and adding to that, right? You want to keep adding a little bit more knowledge of how do I turn this to an advantage? How do I turn this to an advantage? How do I kill my opponent with this? And even just through the matter of looking for those attacks, you're going to instantly start to play better StarCraft. Oh, you missed the carriers with the biles. He wasn't even dodging.
Yeah, I know. I could have gotten him with the bot. Yeah, I was aiming for the Nexus with the biles, but in retrospect, I should have just spammed the carriers.
Yeah, just count on your opponent being a baboon. Yeah, just hope he doesn't dodge.
Yeah, I wasn't counting on that, but he like literally didn't move the carriers at all. Like I remember actually very clearly as the biles were in the air, in my head I was like, oh, he's not moving the carriers. Like if I had just put them on top of the carriers, it would have been one of those gorgeous moments. But it's okay. So like here I was.
Sorry,
my
mic just muted there. Sorry about that. I accidentally mishit a button on it. I was just saying, Zest loses his carriers to Dark all the time, to his Ravagers. Like Dark regularly beats carriers without anything that shoots up. It's fucking hilarious. He just like distracts with like a Ling run by. The Protoss looks back and 3 carriers die to Corrosive Bile, and you're like, this is one of the best Protoss in the world. Like, but that's Dark is a magician. He is one of the most exciting players at the moment because it doesn't matter how far behind he is, he still wins.
Well, I also I just set up the holding down C to do the biles because I think at the point of this game I'm pretty sure I was C click for the biles still because I just hadn't set that up. So.
Yeah. Well, that's real nice. That's real nice. Even without setting that up, a lot of people don't realize with no modifications, you can actually, with the smart casting and the clever AI they have for it in StarCraft 2, you can actually hold down a spell like Storm, Fungal, whatever, And if you just hold the button down, it toggles after like maybe a third of a second. It might have something to do with your repeat rate. I'm not sure. And basically you can just click. You can just go left click, left click, left click, which is actually a funny thing. Most people don't know, pro gamers included. Like I
didn't know
regularly
that.
have pro gamers say they have no idea. I don't use it.
That's
to be fair, if you're trying to shoot down carriers, it's one of the few times I'd probably use the hold down the button spam like you do with the rapid fire. A lot of the time in like a Roach versus Roach Ravager fight, I want to spread those biles out anyway, right? Because I want to like make their whole concave break, you know? So I'm not doing a lot of, let's put 8 corrosive biles. I see a lot of people, they get addicted to that. And it's like, okay, I'm going to put 12 corrosive biles in one spot versus a bio army. And I'm like, yeah, they're Marines. They get one shot. Like we don't want to stack our piles in this scenario. We want to be peppering them around to kind of force their whole army to try to dodge, or they're going to get punished really hard.
Yeah. Oh, I just lost my. Oh God, that hurts so much to see.
Let's go. I mean, you're going mixed army again, Hydra Corruptor, right?
Yeah.
So it just makes things harder than it needs to be. It's like this was always going to happen, just because you didn't have that clear timing. If you just went hard into Corruptors straight away after like your first Ling run bys or whatever, or Ling Bane run bys, any of those things we talked about, or even just a clear Hydra timing, could have hit before Storm and stuff. Any of those would have been way more decisive. You would have done really well. Good instincts when you're behind. You're doing like Ling run bys and stuff though. But I think we've mapped out now kind of how we can have a much clearer game plan. And I really do like this. That the fact that you've got such a good economic basis, that was kind of the thing I was most worried about when I was telling you to do the Ling Bane stuff. I was like, you do need to have like a good opening. Like it's all about getting a good start so that you can kind of throw the Ling Bane at them, drone behind it, throw the Ling Bane at them, like that sort of thing. So for a lot of people I'm coaching, because you're so instinctively greedy already against these very passive Void Ray players, I'm like, oh, you're set up so well for this. You're going to love this style, dude. You're going to have so much fun with it.
Oh, really? Yeah. Sorry, one sec. Somebody actually just knocked at the door. So I need to answer the door.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be right back.
No worries, mate. All right, we're going to finish up when he's back, guys. But for now, thank you very much. My Viper Ruptor micro sucks, says Snapcast. It could be easy to miss it. I go Hydra Ling Bane mid-game. I harass Turtle Skytoss, and then I transition to Lurkers and Infested Shroud. That's a complicated army. Neuros can be really good on Archons below an army. Yeah, they can. I find it so, like, if I've let it get to that stage, it's so complicated. I'm normally kind of checked out of the game a little bit, to be honest, guys. Yeah. I prefer Corruptor Viper. Diamond 2 Zerg. I don't like Pig's aggressive style. It doesn't feel comfortable. Nothing feels comfortable till you play more of it, Arianity.
Hey, I'm back.
No worries, mate.
A delivery that I had to pick up. He was just standing at the door, so.
Oh, what? A courier actually not just been like, nah, they're definitely not home. He's like, I shouted from the street, no one answered the door, and I immediately got in the van and drove away. What is this service? Must have been FedEx, right?
My setup is right in front of the door. So he was like standing there. He knocked and he was standing there looking in, watching me sitting at my computer. Like,
oh shit!
Like,
you should have just ran. No worries, man. You could always just be like, oh, someone's at the door. Just drop it. It's all good. Anyways, we're gonna finish up. We're out of time. But I hope this was useful. In that, I mean, I know it's only one matchup we got to go deep on, but like I hope. I really do think take that exercise of go write down your attack timings for the other matchups. It's such a good exercise. Even if it's like Zerg versus Terran, where maybe you play a bit more of a naturally passive style, you can think of it as almost like waiting for a fight where you're like, oh, at this point, I like focus really hard on army until I get a good fight. And that's my rule. Yeah. So I don't just go 80 drones off like a handful of Ling Bane and then like lose all map control and momentum, right? So it's going to, and it also will give you the opportunity to sometimes just kill people. So I think that'll be a good exercise for you in your other matchups. But yeah, I mean, was this useful for you today or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is the army composition stuff. Cause I mean, I just think I'm still kind of getting back into stuff. So I don't really, I just don't have a good sense for like what army compositions are good in which situations yet. So I think that was really useful. I hadn't thought about the, just the Ling Bane Ultra style. I think that sounds pretty fun too, because I always really like styles like that. So
yeah. For me, it dodges all of the things that I find unfun about playing versus Skytoss. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like even a trade-off where I'm like, well, what if I am a bit too greedy and they actually make like 12 void rays and they run in and kill my hive, like, or my lair, because I didn't even realize that I don't have enough queens and maybe I just
Thanks
straight
for
up lose the
Bezos
game.
bucks.
I actually say that's fine. Like I go, that's okay. I could have spotted it by being a bit more active with Zerglings and realizing what I was up against, adding a few more spores or queens. But if I lose that game, I don't mind, because I would rather lose a game like that in 10, 12 minutes than lose a 40-minute game where I'm just like, fuck, man, this guy's just massing cannon shield battery carrier across the map and storm. Like for me, I just find that really frustrating because I like movement, I like run bys, I like mobility, I like attacking and expanding behind it. So for me, this is a more fun style where I feel I can be proactive and do a lot of things. So, you know, if that matches your style and you find it enjoyable, then go for it. Obviously, it all depends how you want to play the game. But in general, yeah, it's we've got to take advantage against a greedy opponent who's very passive, and you're already doing that really well at the start of the game. So you've already got the building block where you're 80% of the way there. You just need to put the cherry on top of the pie.
I see. Okay, great. That sounds awesome.
Awesome, dude. All right, well, welcome back to StarCraft. And yeah, hope your next 40, 50, 60 ladder games turn into a couple hundred and we get to hear more. So let me know how it goes, mate. If anything in the notes doesn't make sense. I guess I didn't write that many notes down today, did I? We did a lot of theory talk. Oh, we wrote a few things. But if anything doesn't make sense, just let me know.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And I'll, depending on the semester just started, so I'm going to get really, really busy. But if I keep playing, I might do another session at some point.
Hells yeah, dude. Yeah, just hit me up anytime. All right. Well, good luck on ladder. Good luck with semester, and I'll catch you next time, brother.
Yeah. Take care, dude. Bye-bye.
Good night, man.